that was quite an achievement. We look forward to working very closely with Laura. She has come to Congress, and her predecessor had left such a mark, the Honorable Juanita Melinda McDonald, that we know that this sister's coming with some serious power and coming with the spirit, because I understand you used to work for Juanita at one point in time as well. And we're all looking forward to working very closely with this sister, and I hope that you will all just welcome her, because she was one of you just not too long ago. Councilmember Laura Rodriguez.
That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate that. I'm not going to talk a lot about the charge that we have before us, because I've had members far more experienced than myself who've shared that with you this morning. I thought I would just talk a little bit about the fact of being ready. We can unleash our power all we want, but if we're not ready and we don't have any power in our arsenal, it really is not going to prevail to the degree that we would like it to. I want to say, first of all, that the reason why we get involved, we have to face the fact. We can talk a lot about we're involved because we want to help our community and all of that, but we also have to remember being involved also helps yourself. And to the degree that we can encourage our young people to get involved in public service, we have to help them understand that by being a public servant will also benefit them as well. And I think when they can start seeing that being a public servant can be just as viable as being an entrepreneur, being a doctor, being a lawyer, whatever it is that they want to be, we have to teach our young people that this is a viable profession as well. A couple things I wanted to share with you. We hear a lot of discussion about what happened with Jenna 6 and the unfortunate situation that we're currently living in. But I think it's also important to celebrate the good things that we see. The fact that we have a woman, a Hispanic, and an African American man who are all running for president of the United States also says how far we have come. And we can't forget that. As we look at the challenges that we're fighting, we also have to celebrate some of the progress that we have made as well. When people talk about the fact that I've been able to ascend in all 3 levels of government in 1 year, believe me, there has been a price and there's been a payment for that. And I'm hoping to enjoy it at some point, but right now it has been an incredible ride. But what I would like to share with you, for those of you who are interested in taking that ride yourself. Number one, I found that we have to be balanced. We have to be the best. And so in your legislatures, I would encourage you not just to be the chair of health, or not just to be the chair of education, but to consider to be the chair of budget. Consider to be the chair of energy and commerce. Step out of our comfort zone of the things that we typically focus on and get on some of those other committees. Why? We need to fight for education, and we need to fight for health, because we're some of the few who are actually going to do that. But if you're going to be able to raise the money, to be competitive, you also have to consider some of those other committees as well, so that you can move yourself forward to really reach the level that you might personally want to obtain. The other thing I'd like to say is we have to be harder workers than most. The reason why I've been successful is I outwork everybody around me. And that's what we're going to have to do if we expect to continue to move on. If we're going to work just like everyone else, get there 8 to 5, 8 to 8, whatever it is, if we're only going to do call time once a week like everybody else does call time once a week, we will be like everyone else. And so if we expect to achieve these incredible moments, we're going to have to be better and work harder than everyone else. The other thing I would say is that we have to be willing to submit to someone else. And sometimes as an African American, both men and women, that's not always something people think we can do very well at. But I had an opportunity when I worked for Congresswoman McDonald. I was working for a Fortune 40 company. I had a master's in business and was doing quite well. But I knew that what I was doing in a profession wasn't my personal desire, it wasn't my dream, and I wanted to get into this profession of serving people. And so I took a job as a field representative for the congresswoman in her district. And I did the lowliest of everything and didn't have a problem with it, and served as a staff member for the last 10 years. When I recently got elected to the State Assembly in California, that was the first time I have worked one job in 10 years. The first time in 10 years. And so we've got to kind of put the egos behind, put the personal agendas behind, and realize that we might have to submit to someone else. And realize that through submitting, we might be able to gain, we might be able to learn something, we might be able to become empowered by just our association with those individuals, and to help us to be able to go to the next step. And then the last two things I want to talk about are, we have to be ready when the door opens. A lot of times we will plan ahead and we'll say, okay, I'm in the assembly. In California, we have term limits. So let's say you plan ahead, 6 years I'll be in the assembly, 8 years I'll be in the Senate. You never know when God is going to open the door. And in my case, when Congresswoman McDonald passed, I had worked for her, even though she had been ill several years ago. Once she became chair of House Administration, I said, there's no way I'm getting to Congress for 8 or 10 years, because as they said, being in the majority is much better than being in the minority. And so I wasn't even thinking about Congress. I had just gotten elected to the state legislature. I had bought a house. I mean, it was the furthest thing from my mind. And so what I want to say to you is, we always have to be ready, because you never know when that door will open. You have to be financially ready. You have to be professionally ready, and you also have to be ready from an organization standpoint, from your framework of the folks that you work with. And you never know when that door will open, and that's another reason why I believe I was successful. Some of it was because I believe I was the best candidate, but a lot of it, I believe, is because I was ready. And I knew how to turn my operation around in 35 days to win a congressional seat. And in closing, I want to say that for us to be successful, we have to have incredible fortitude. And what I mean by that is, number one, you have to be able to financially bring yourself to the table. And as a wise person said to me, we can either be at the table or on the table. And oftentimes we're on the table and not at the table. I had to personally mortgage my home twice to be elected. Twice. And I still have not paid myself back now from this second race. And so we have to be in the position where we financially can do creative things that most folks think we will not be able to do. I beat a state senator who had served in the assembly for 6 years, who was representing an area that was predominantly Hispanic. I was able to beat everyone thought was the front runner. But see, we have to be able to bring in the things that they won't expect that we're going to have. The other thing I would share is that we have to have the energy. I talked about the hard work. We also have to have the tough skin. My mother often says to me, why do you do this? By the time we get beat up and all the things that happen in the press, and even by our own colleagues, the people we work with, it takes a lot to stomach all of that. And lastly, I see Mr. Green, Congressman Green, who entered the room, who I'm sure you'll hear from. The last thing I would say that I believe why we are successful more than anyone else is because we believe in God. And we're not ashamed to say we believe in God. Talking about God isn't something we just talk about because we're running for office. It's something that we've lived. And so I believe that's what sets us apart over most that we end up having to run against. So I'm a rookie on the block. I look forward to working with all of you over the years. Any help that I can extend, I'm more than happy to do. But most of all, I just want to say that we have to be ready. We've got to have some power to unleash the power. I look forward to working with you.
I did see Congresswoman